Hello and welcome to the Unleash podcast brought to you by Embrace the Power, Unleash Your Potential, Make Your Impact. I'm your host, Amy Lee Miller, here with my co-host today, MikeG. And I am very excited to welcome a very special guest to the show, professional stand-up comedian, and also my good friend, Andy Pitz. Andy has been performing stand-up comedy, welcome Andy, since 1990, and his clean and engaging style has landed him spots on The Late Show with David Letterman, as well as numerous other television spots. Andy performs throughout the Northeast, and he is featured daily on Sirius XM Radio. Andy, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you, Amy. I am good, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much
Andy.
for having me on.
Absolutely. It is always a treat to have the opportunity to talk with you. Of course, you are a very funny guy. I've seen you perform live. I love to laugh, just like everybody else. But I also really enjoy some of our conversations that we have had around personal growth and development. So, yeah, I'm really excited actually to talk a little bit more about that today.
Same here. Yeah.
I do have to say first, as a career coach, congratulations on your career. A career in stand-up comedy. That is not easy. Actually, no, because I tried it for a little bit. It takes a lot of dedication. You have to really want it, and of course, it takes a lot of talent. So, I am curious, what first sparked your interest in pursuing stand-up comedy, and then what made you stick with it?
I think it was when I was a kid, and my dad had every comedy album that was hot at the time, like the late 70s, when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. He had every, George Carlin album, Rodney Dangerfield, all those great Robin Williams albums. Like when you could put on an album and just listen to it. And I would listen to them with my dad, and it was a lot of fun. And it took me a while to grasp that that's like a career for these guys. I thought it was just people being funny and somebody happens to be recording it. But when I got a little older, I was like, oh, you can actually do that. And, started doing it when I was in college in the, late 1980s, when there were comedy rooms everywhere. There was just opportunities galore. And I got pretty lucky that way because there was no shortage of places to work. And I just kind of grew up listening to it. So even the first time I started, I had a sense, I guess, of maybe how to tell a joke or rhythm and when to stop talking or engage the audience and things like that. And I was a middle child, so I guess wanted the attention.
Middle child. What number are you, Mike?
Me, I'm number one. There's only two of us. I'm the oldest. Okay. So it's like, when the second one came, nothing happened to him. He was a baby.
Okay. I'm a middle child too. So for me, it was always about fairness. I wanted, fairness for everybody. So
yeah, you get it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're the peacemakers. We make sure everybody's okay. Appeasing fires. Are you good? Are you good? I'm good. Okay.
That trait skipped me, I think. So I didn't get that one. I was more the opposite of I was more the confrontational one rather than the peacemaker.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that was a middle child syndrome thing.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not an expert in it, but I'm sure obviously there could be more than one style, but conventionally I think, we're the go-betweens and the keeping everybody happy.
Okay. So it sounds like you fell right into your lane with stand-up comedy. It sounds to me like you're good at listening to your instincts, because a lot of times if we're feeling unaligned or maybe pushing in a certain direction and it's just not working out, I feel like maybe that's because that's not the path that's meant for us. And then it can tend to feel more like a struggle and less of that challenge. Did you ever was there ever a time in your comedy career where you felt like it was that struggle, or did it always feel like, okay, this is a challenge, but I'm making progress? Or what was that like for you?
Well, I think, from the time that you even did it, you might have felt that sometimes you feel like you're on the right track, and sometimes you feel like you've made a horrible mistake, a catastrophic lapse in judgment. And it's really, on the heels of a great show or a not so great show. And the challenge, I think, is almost always there, at least maybe I think it should be, because I never wanted to be one of these. I used to see a lot of comedians that just sort of like level off for a really, really long, like forever. Like basically you would see some
just kind of stay at one spot and not progress further, you mean?
Yeah. And it seemed like that's the cool thing about being a New York comic, like around the city, is because I think people sort of push you to be creative as much as possible and not just lock in and do the same set. Like these people on the road, when you would see them in, the smaller markets or whatever, it's like there was one time I didn't see a guy for like 8 or 9 years, and it was literally word for word the exact same thing. And he was great, did well, but it was sort of something like you were speaking about instincts before. That felt like something that I was instinctively drawn not to do, because I thought it would be just kind of boring and awful. But I think the challenge is always there to sort of talk about what's happening in your life, deciding what to talk about, what not to talk about, to put the onus on yourself to maybe sort of be original and not just do the same topics everybody's doing, whether you're going to use certain kind of language or talk about politics or touchy subjects, which is something I've sort of generally stayed away from. But yeah, it's sort of, I don't know, like almost any other career, it's never not challenging if that's the way you decide to do it. Frustrating, maybe sometimes, to the point where
you gotta laugh at yourself.
Challenge anymore, or what am I doing? That kind of stuff. It shows up once in a while, but that's when we sort of dig into this stuff I think that we're going to talk about, and maybe use some resources that are out there. Like that's the greatest thing about today. It's like I don't know any problem that could come up or any challenge that we could face. It doesn't matter what job it is. It's like you don't have to look very far to figure out or to see the material that's available out there for people that are in the same situation, whether the context is the same or different, or it doesn't matter. I mean, there's stuff out there for us, and that's why you and I connected so much about it, right?
Stuff out there as far as for growth, personal development, overcoming a challenge, achieving a goal, resources.
Yeah. And forgive me for not being like extremely hilarious in this podcast, but I do take this stuff kind of seriously. I love talking to people about it. I love to be funny, like on stage or in certain situations. But I think, I think from our emails back and forth and our phone conversations, we wanted this to sort of be focused on how the people that listen to this can also find some of the stuff that's out there, because you and I really look pretty hard for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's great to be funny. I love laughing, like I shared, but I like serious conversations. I like conversations that help me grow. And we've had the pleasure of having some of those great conversations. One of which I would love for you to share a little bit about. There was an instrumental time that, or something that leveled your career, your comedy career up to the next level. And it was around, I want to hear more about a little bit about your mindset, the actions that you took and the mindset that helped you push to that next level, because it is part of the conversations that we've had about manifesting and ultimately achieving, what really excites you.
Yeah. So I think it was back in 1997, I moved to New York, and I was with my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife, who's currently my ex-wife. But we both came to the city right from, like, she was just getting out of college in Buffalo. And in Buffalo, I got this weird day job. I didn't know what a multi-level marketing company was back then, but it turns out that it's what it was, and they sold environmentally responsible products like water filters and things like that. But anyway, everybody who got hired was basically mandated to read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm listening to that right now, audiobook. Love it.
It all circles back. Like even videos that I watch that people are putting things out today,
Yep.
never fail to mention this book. Like, this is sort of like the bottom of the I was going to say pyramid, talking about the multi-level marketing,
Right.
but it's the base of a lot of the stuff that we see. So that was the one book, and I've never heard of it. I was turned off by the title of it. I'm like, think you grow rich, you'll be rich. And
sounds a little boring.
Yeah. And it wasn't, I go, I'm not like that, man. I'm not materialistic, and it had nothing to do with that. And if people are listening to this, if you have not read this book yet, go get yourself a copy, because rich has nothing to do with money as it pertains to this book. Rich is a state of mind, an attitude. And if you have a wealthy mindset, so to speak, if you have a positive attitude, that's the greatest currency you can have in this in this life, in this world. And I was thanks, Mike. The am I right? I mean, so it had nothing to do with cash. It had nothing.
Yeah, your mindset dictates your actions. And so there's, of course, law of attraction. We attract more of how we're feeling. But some of it's not one of those law of attraction tricks that people feel like, oh, law of attraction, I don't really get it, or I've got to trick my mind or whatever. Your mindset also, what you think and what you feel dictates your actions. If you believe that you can achieve, you're going to push harder. You're going to stick with it.
Yes.
So, that's
100%.
Talking about, right?
And question, Andy, though, did the comedy and everything that you've been through, has it made you grow? Did it make you like more of an open-minded person in everything you're doing now?
I think so. I think it's afforded me opportunity to meet, thousands of people from all walks of life that I wouldn't have met if I wasn't doing this job. The regional travel, the international travel, like I don't think I would have gone to China or Israel or Europe, maybe Europe, but some of the places that I've gone to perform and met people, very eye-opening experience. One interesting one was down in Florida. We were doing fundraising shows for an organization called the Innocence Project, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but what they do is
I've heard of it, but I don't know. Yeah.
They exonerate wrongfully convicted criminals from jail. And I don't think I would have had an opportunity to meet somebody who you meet a guy and you say like, hey, nice to meet you. And you just heard 20 seconds before you met the guy that he was in jail for 27 years for something he didn't do.
Wow. Yeah.
And that we have to admit, like, obviously our legal system is deeply flawed and very, very far from perfect. And there are stories like this. So, we were doing, like I said, fundraising for them. I got to meet people like that. And you're just like, wow. There are, people that like to come out. And this guy goes, well, I heard you guys were doing this show, and I know it's connected to the organization that got me my freedom again. And I wanted to come and say hello.
Wow, that's amazing.
Where are you going to meet somebody like that?
Yeah.
And as it relates back to the visualization or the attraction stuff that you mentioned before, like that's where I didn't last very long in that job that made me read that book. It was just awful.
Maybe that's why you got that job, so that you would read the book and it would push you in
absolutely
the right direction and open things up for you.
So I brought the book with me to New York, and I don't know, you want me to tell like a little encapsulated version, I think, because we were doing this on our prep call. I decided I didn't want to be a salesman. I was embarking on this career in comedy, and I was already good, like a good 8 or 9 years in, and I was doing okay. I was getting work, whatever, but I was sort of not really goal setting or anything exciting. So I decided to use what I learned in that book. And I literally made note cards with what I wanted. And what I wanted was to appear on either the David Letterman show or the Conan O'Brien show, which were both based in New York at the time. I said, I am doing this. And I pictured myself doing it. I, immersed myself, just like the book will tell you how to do this, but just to pretend like you've already done it. And that sort of mindset, and I guess whole body set, puts out what comes back to you, and vice versa. Like you match with it, like you match with what you want. And all of a sudden, a year and a half later, I was living what I was visualizing. And it just was a mind-blowing experience, because I was definitely nothing special. I mean, I was okay as a comedian, but it was sort of like, I heard from several people, they were just like, gosh, you came out of nowhere, man. Like, how did you get
That's
this?
so
How did you do this?
amazing.
I was like, well, I know I sort of came out of nowhere. I wasn't like, somebody that was like hot or a rising star that had a lot of attention. This was like before the internet. So I didn't have a lot of followers. There was no such thing as that.
Right.
I was just a guy that was grinding it out in the clubs. But the whole time that I was doing it for years around New York, I just had my mind on this goal. And we are goal-oriented creatures. Like, that's what sets us apart from a lot of other creatures, is we can say, this is what I would like to do. This is what would make me happy. This is what I can do to contribute to the happiness of other people. So
it's really what makes
it
you happy. Yeah.
And the universe will reward you for that. And I know I used to think it sounded weird. I used to not like when people talk like that, but it's true. It's true.
It's funny. I used to be made fun of talking like that, because to me, my mindset is, if you can visualize, you can do it. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. It's just, you got to keep it going, keep it going. Fight against the negative. Go with the positive, and just the naysayers.
Right.
No,
and there will be plenty of it. It's never.
Oh, absolutely. So
there's no such thing as a straight line to it. Obviously, there's going to be setbacks. There were a lot of bumps in the road, so to speak. And with the focus on the goal, with the goal in mind, those things become like, you're like a car that has shock absorbers. You feel it.
Yeah.
You feel the bumps, but they don't send you going off the road.
Yes, because your why.
Where you are. You're going forward, and you're still able to.
You know what you want, and you know why you want it. And that can, when you have those bumps, you just come back to your dream, your vision, and why you want it. And that's, how you're going to make your bigger impact. And that keeps you pushing yourself forward, even when you have those challenging times. And I find that those challenges, the bumps, as you call them, that you feel it, they make you stronger, of course. And I'm curious, was there a significant challenge or maybe impactful lesson that you went through that ended up being something positive for you in the long run?
Let me see if I understand your question. Like a setback that turned out to be
to serve you later.
Oh gosh. Well, not to get too heavy and crazy, but when you talk to people about their childhoods and things like that, there's a lot of these stories out there. But I mentioned before, my dad and I bonded over comedy, and he was a big part of my life, and for a lot of it, not necessarily in a good way. He was an abusive guy. He was a drinker. He always had a job. He was responsible. He was a school teacher, but he was not a very happy person. And a lot of that came down on me in the form of physical abuse and emotional abuse, probably from the time I was like 5 until like 15 or 16. And these are things that become, when you're talking about trauma and psychological abuse, that kind of stuff. I didn't realize at the time how long it would stick with me, and how much it would be a prism of how I saw the entire world. Absolutely. So when I started to wake up to the fact that you can't just, because I tried, you guys, I tried to just be be tough and ignore it and said, hey, that was my past and it's not around anymore. But that stuff sticks with you. And as I got older and I started to have experiences that people noticed, they were like, you are showing signs of this. You need to get help. Whether it was a therapist or some older friends that were wiser. The universal feedback that I was getting was that there were some deep underlying issues. Like, you just can't ignore this anymore.
Yeah.
So the reason I would say that is maybe turned into a positive thing was that I no longer judge people for, that's my statement, because we've seen the memes, we've seen the calendars and the magnets and the things that, you never know what somebody's going through. Like, be kind people. You have no idea what this person has dealt with in their past or even that day. And to assume that if you look at someone and you say, oh boy, they must have a great life. It's not always like that.
Yeah, you never know what happens in the back of the door, behind closed doors, as they say.
Sure.
And I'm with you on that. I was raised with military people, just to share something with you guys as well. Don't show fear. Don't show emotions.
Yeah,
it's
right.
like, it's like,
be a man.
But getting older is like, it's kind of draining. It's really draining to
That's why older men start to show their emotions. I've seen that with my father, my stepfather, and my paternal grandfather. My maternal grandfather, he's always been very expressive and emotive. So ironically, maybe not ironically, but interestingly, I've never seen him cry. But the other men in my family that held everything in, as they get older, they're very emotional and will, cry out of, joy or pride. And it's it can be a real challenge for men, I find, to be able to, because you guys are trying to be strong, when I complain, but when we don't acknowledge our emotions, we can run into a lot of challenges. And actually acknowledging our emotions, what we're feeling, doing that deeper work, that's strength, that's vulnerability, and that's some of the hardest work that we'll ever do. Did you find that, Andy?
Yeah, for sure. And especially having a daughter who's almost 11, she says things to me like, "Are you crying?" Like, all the time. Are you crying? And she seems to notice what and it's 9 times out of 10, it's happiness. I'm proud of her, and things are good, and I can feel. I guess I'm I never thought of myself like that, but I'm an easy cry. I'm an easy laugh. I'm an easy cry. I'm an easy whatever. Don't like holding things in anymore. I don't like it because there were all sorts of, I ended up with diverticulitis, other stomach problems. I actually got an inflamed pancreas one time. I got pancreatitis, and it was nothing other than emotional stuff that was going on in my life. Like, I checked into the hospital with, an inflamed pancreas, which is, by the way, the most painful thing that can happen to somebody besides having a snapped femur. I've heard. It was painful. And they just kept hammering me with this, like, are you a drinker? When was the last time you had a drink? And I was like, nah, I'm not a drinker. I hadn't had anything in, weeks. And they were like, well, this is sort of like, pancreatitis doesn't really happen unless. I go, well, my best friend of 30 years had passed away suddenly, like 2 weeks before. I was slated to go with, he was married to a cousin of mine. And we were going back to London, where they lived, to clean out the flat and do this other, a lot of other things going on. And I think it just sort of, I was doing that thing that we were talking about. I was like, no, I can do it. Don't worry. It doesn't bother me. I'll get it done. Don't you worry. Everybody count on Andy. Don't worry. And boom, in the hospital. And I remember it was when my daughter was in kindergarten, like her whole class made me get well cards, and it was just an experience I'll never forget, because I said, I'm never going to let this happen to me again. and
Yeah. Okay.
throughout with meditation and exercise and other ways of taking care of ourselves. Like, you can't take care of anybody else if you are not taking care of yourself. So
100% is never selfish to invest in yourself, because the more full you are, you're going to be able to give that to others. But also, going back to what we're talking about, how we treat others, how we're feeling, projection. So we got to build ourselves up and take good care of ourselves. Like you were saying, you never know what somebody else is going through. I feel like we're all the time broadcasting like a big sign on our forehead, how we're feeling inside based on our interactions with others. So the best investment you can ever make is in yourself.
Yeah. And I want those interactions to be pleasant, and I want the interactions with myself to be pleasant. I don't want to be, constantly beating myself up or reprimanding myself for ignoring what I need to do to be good, to be okay.
Yeah. Do you take the comedy as an escape, though, as to let it all out in comedy and on stage and stuff like that?
So I think I have felt that way. I'm not sure if it's like the biggest thing that I use it for. I mean, it's just now it's my job, and it's one of those jobs that is sort of a way of life. So everything comes through there. Like comedy is a release. It's a way to make money. It's a way to travel. It's a way to meet people. It's a way to live. So comedy means basically everything. I mean, I'm starting my 33rd year in it. So, I mean, it's even hard to remember all the great experiences and all the not so great. I mean, there are a couple, of course, that stand out. But yeah, Mike, there's been times where I would get to a club and be just like, God, I don't want to be here. But I was at home thinking I should go because I know how I'm going to feel when I'm done. It's sort of like if I would have stayed home and, canceled or, that would have been awful for all of those reasons. But I don't think I've ever gotten off stage feeling any worse than when I went on stage, at least physically. I mean, there have been mentally times where I'm just like destroyed. And like, oh boy, that did not go well. And, those are rough. And the cool thing about it is that I guess it's the same with a lot of other jobs too, is that we've all been there. We've all been in the highest highs and the lowest lows. And we know that we can reach out to a friend of ours and, not even have to explain it. Just as soon as you start telling some details, the other person is like, oh God, yeah. And people are there for you.
It's hard. It's hard to reach out to the people sometimes because I love it when people tell you, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, oh, thanks. I've been sitting here talking to you 10 minutes. That's the best thing you tell me. I don't know what to tell you.
I guess it helps a little. Often. Sorry, go ahead, Andy.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't know if it's any consolation. Sometimes it helps just to have people listen, but comics not the best listeners. Like, they're usually waiting for you to get done talking so they can say, yeah, me too. But this happened to me last week, and that, that's great. Yeah. And there's like a camaraderie and a, almost a commiseration, but it does help to know that you're not the only one. You're not special when you do great. You're not special when you stink up the place and get yelled at and disappoint a whole bunch of people. And it's like we've probably heard this a million times in the books we read or the podcasts or videos. It's like everything's temporary. Nothing. The greatest things in the world don't last any longer than the most horrible things.
Yeah. And, that's one of my, I call it a quick pick-me-up tip. Acknowledge however you're feeling. It's always okay. And also remind yourself that it's temporary. You're likely going to feel way different, much better, maybe later that same day or, the next day. So you've been through a lot. You've accomplished a lot. You have a lot of great things to to be proud of. I would definitely call you a success because you're doing what you love and
Yeah.
you're happy doing it. And to me, that's success. Any advice for our listeners out there who are maybe still searching for what they love, or maybe haven't solidified that belief in themselves that they can achieve what it is they are trying to envision? Or
Sure. And I'm honored that you would even ask me that, because I don't consider myself an expert in anything, but there are a couple of things that I've heard that resonate with me that I would pass along. And the most useful things are, I guess, that the way that almost everyone, like over 99% of the people that you meet, look at the world, like the outside world that we, our five senses stuff, the stuff that comes in. I think most people are conditioned to see that outside world as what is affecting us and what is guiding us and what is sort of like bossing us around. Like we're at the whim of the outside, our circumstances, our life, our situations. Like it's like, how are you? Well, things suck because this is going wrong and this is going wrong and that's going wrong. Well, or how's everything? It's great. I'm pointing outside and saying that's good, and that's good. And what I want to try to get across is that when I'm the happiest and when I'm the most effective is when I remember that the outside is the result of what's going on in here
100%.
and in here.
So
like
good.
It's not it like I make that outside first.
Yeah.
And it shows up.
Yep.
And I think that's almost the complete reverse of what most of us, unfortunately, are conditioned to think. Like as we go through life, life sucks. Mondays. Oh,
and that can be
shit like that.
Such a good point that you made right there. And a lot of I think a lot of people will keep that mindset because it's hard to take responsibility for ourselves and say, oh, how could this be my fault? This person treated me this way. It's their fault, or nothing ever works out for me. But the power in accepting responsibility for ourselves and for our state and for our life is that we have the power to change it. We know, and when you accept that responsibility, that you are the one that has created your circumstances, then you realize the power in that. That's true self-empowerment. Well, if I don't like my circumstances, I can create them. I have that power.
That's right.
Exactly what you're saying. That's awesome.
It's been said, I don't know if I'll butcher it or I'll nail it, but they say, the good news is that it's all up to you. The bad news is that it's all up to you. It's sort of like you were saying, like, gosh, it's a huge responsibility, but what else is there to life? I mean, we can't, and it does work out for some people who just sort of like go with the flow and like, oh yeah, but I don't consider myself that lucky that I'm going to leave it up to fate or circumstances or luck or determinism or whatever. I want to have a more active role, and my goal is to try to be as close to 100% of that with that as I can. And that's something that I'm shooting for. It's my inspiration, so to speak. Like there's millions of opportunities every day that I need to remind myself, like, oh, I'm not gonna let myself go this way. I have to stay what I know is the responsible way, like you put it, like the self
taking responsibility for yourself, empowering yourself, and I think that's also Thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing that with our listeners. Hopefully that'll inspire somebody out there who needs to hear that. But yeah, it is our responsibility to invest in ourselves and take responsibility for ourselves if we're not happy, because that's what we're going to be sharing with the world. So anyhow, thank you so much, Andy. It has been such a pleasure as always to talk with you. And I was just really excited to get some of your knowledge in this platform where we can share it with our listeners. So
sure. I'm so flattered and, very appreciative that you asked me and that you showed up in my life when you did, through a couple mutual friends of ours. And I look forward to having meatballs on the street again.
Me too. And more inspirational conversations. So thank you again, Andy.
That would be great.
Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you are interested in checking out some more motivational content, you can check out my book, Where's My Mustard? How to Let Go, Attract, and Achieve a Quest to Self-Empowerment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and definitely check out MikeG and Vince Bugs on their Embrace the Power podcast for more inspirational interviews. And you can also find me on YouTube at Amy Lee Miller Coaching. And it's been great, guys. Thanks so much. And until next time,
meeting you,
stay
Andy.
curious.
And good luck on your shows. And let's keep it moving, man.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Best to you too. It was a pleasure connecting with you on this. Thanks, Amy, for
the next time. You got to come back.
Of course.